My name is Emma McConnell, and I'm working on my PhD in music theory at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York.
Now, Emma, you gave us a paper at this conference. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. The title of my paper is Compositional Integrity in La Bohème, Conventions and Ingenuity in Act 4. and I basically was trying to discuss the structure of the last act of the opera and how it coincides with the drama. A very receptive audience, pleasure to speak in front of, really. They seemed very attentive, and also at the end, in the question period, I received a number of very helpful questions that
could add to the thought process.
Exactly, yeah. They were very helpful in the sense of even where I can take this further, and also in terms of questioning my philosophical background, not in terms of whether it was valid, but just in terms of clarification.
It's a great way to bring ideas together, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And even another colleague here was presenting on the same chunk of La Bohème, and he was present at my paper and asked me a question that coincided with his own work. And actually, we brought our ideas together very fruitfully this weekend, so that was very exciting.
And you can perhaps sort of take that discussion further.
Exactly. We'll be sharing our papers with each other and giving feedback. So
brilliant.
My name's Rhianne Hutchings. I'm the director of Welsh National Opera's Max department, which is the education and outreach wing of the company.
And so we've just finished one of the sessions, which was a round table. So tell us a little bit more about what we've just seen.
Well, we've seen two practitioners, our artistic director David Pountney and Matthew Best, one of our singers who's in Tristan and Isolde. I would say probably sparring with two academics, chaired by Simon Rees, who is our dramaturg. And they were having a very lively discussion about staging opera and the issues around that.
Which is particularly interesting when you get musicologists and performers together.
Absolutely.
Because, and composers,
But I mean, obviously we've got a whole audience of academics here.
Yes.
And so to bring in, my thought for this session, really, when Claire and I talked about it, was to bring in someone like David, who would have some very particular ideas about what staging opera might be about, and that might be at odds to what some of the academics might think.
Obviously has some quite strong opinions on that.
Just let's simplify this argument. I mean, the point is, it's not like going up and scratching the smile off the Mona Lisa. The Wagner music lives in these books on the shelves. So if you do a performance where it's reorchestrated for a jazz band, it may work, it may not, but you've not gone and scratched the face off the music. The music is still there in between its covers. So, I agree with you. Of course, 9 times out of 10, such an action will not work. It will be stupid. It will be imbecilic. That's absolutely clear. But if somebody's smart enough to make it work, they've not done any damage to the original object. And, all these arguments about productions, traditional or modern or whatever, that's all nonsense. It's very clear and very simple. There are only two things. There are good productions and bad productions of any conceivable style, traditional or modern or crazy or whatever. And that's all there is to it. It's not even really worth talking about.
Okay. Hello, I'm Sarah Hibbard from the University of Nottingham, and I work on opera in early 19th century Paris.
You were involved with one of the sessions today. Can you tell us a bit more about what you did?
Sure, yeah, I was chairing a session on performance history, and we had speakers looking at the ways in which performance conventions are preserved or not preserved, how they evolve in subsequent performances. So it was very interesting. It was great, actually, and lots of questions, which is always a good sign. So some interesting discussion after each of the papers, and also lots of quite interesting links following through topics coming back. So the issue of early recordings, for example, and the kind of status that they have, and what we look for in early performance recordings, whether we can trust them, and whether they're really performances in the sort of live sense of the word.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. Going back to the music, and I mean, because you were coming from a kind of world where you made your own choices and your own meaning, and obviously what you're coming to in opera is a very structured, a score that can be changed in certain places, but is basically set. Is that a limitation?
Well, sort of, but not. I mean, I think you find the freedom by obeying the rules. I think where you really crave the freedom is having a conductor collaborator to work with on a really intimate level, who can help when you start to perceive a musical structure as a limitation or as an enormous challenge. Like, for example, if you're faced with your first Donizetti and you don't really understand what the little variations in the da capo mean, or how you could use them, and you can't really retain them if you're not really a musician, you need a conductor there to elucidate that structure again and again until you can live within it. And you also need a conductor there, you know, in something like Puccini, to say, well, and the vuota, like, is it really just one bar of tempo? What are we trying to do here? Don't you think that's great action? Couldn't you just, because he can't quite get there unless you the tempo, and then if the conductor's with you, of course you do that, and that's what I think is the freedom.
Yeah.
If you don't have that relationship with the conductor, it's much more difficult.
So moving on to La Bohème, this is the first time you've done it.
Yep.
When you were asked, would you like to direct it, what was your first thought?
No. No!
Why?
I hate those boys!
Yeah.
I hate that Mimi! What a horrible piece! I hated it. And then I thought, no, why do you hate it? And I think it's because I'd always just associated this thing of being unfairly manipulated to cry by Puccini. I thought, how dare you make me cry like that? So then I thought, no, you've got to do it. Because I love Schicchi. Schicchi is a piece of absolute genius.
Mm-hmm.
So then I sort of, you know, got myself into it bit by bit and became very interested in, it's always very interesting as a woman director to deal with all these women who die and have horrible lives, and I did so love directing Traviata. I loved Violetta, but I had never had any problem with her, you see, because I saw her. Yeah. I knew what she was. I had much more difficulty trying to find Mimi. I don't think I've quite pulled it off, by the way.
So, Annabelle, this is the first production you've directed with Welsh National Opera. And what's been your experience so far of working with WNO?
It's hard to say at this juncture. I mean, you know, I'm very delighted to have been able to direct La Bohème.
Yeah.
Yes, for that I thank them.
And it's opening night tonight, of course.
Indeed, yes.
So
One hopes as well it'll play this season till Christmas, and then we hope, you know, in years to come they'll want to revive it. And of course that really is part of the journey for me, because then I do have a chance to refine and clarify things which sometimes at the first go around you can't. You know, it's such a big work, and you can't find the absolutely essential pathway.
how did you find the audience response today to the talk that you gave?
Great. It was extremely interesting for me too.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd been at all the papers given. It sounds quite fascinating.
Yes, it's been interesting to see the musicological aspect as well as the
Yes.
performance side.
No, I love all that. I'm increasingly fascinated by that. I'm more interested in music than I am in theatre now.
That's very interesting. It was actually when you were speaking about the difference with working with actors and plays and singers and operas, and how different it is and how different the approach becomes. And that, you know, the voice and the music does take an integral part, but then the acting as well is something that has got to be in with the music. It can't be two separate things.
Well, I mean, it's a purer form, I think, music. Music is the purest of the possible art forms.
Yes.
And since it's very difficult. If you think of it this way, if you look at an orchestra, there is no movement which is not absolutely functional. There is no aesthetic movement in an orchestra. And that's really what you want on the opera stage. But to get singers to be able to reproduce true situations, as in, you know, what do you really do when somebody is dying of TB or when you're falling in love, or, you know, the absolute truth of that movement is very difficult to isolate. And I feel more and more and more that I don't want to try and make that kind of dramatic narrative anymore.
Yeah.
I want to make something much purer, much more formal, which is nevertheless emotionally gripping, you know.
You know, we have a very, very rich academic community here in Cardiff, not just with Cardiff University, but also with University of Glamorgan and Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, it seems that to have those amazing organisations on our doorstep, that, and especially to have the music department at Cardiff, you know, who are there looking into and researching the area in which we work.
Yeah.
Why would we not have a
Absolutely.
joint conference where we could all explore those issues together?
Exactly. So Cardiff is about to become the hotbed of opera right
I think
now.
it has been for some time, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very exciting. Thank you very much for talking to us.
My pleasure.